you're out there, I'll find you.
How resilient or reason defiant is hope? Is hope or defiance placed on a timer? Is it just a matter of the countdown from the clock, or does it require concrete evidence, indisputable proof that the thing you feared, what you wanted so badly to be untrue, is indeed the case? For 2 years, Deacon St. John held on to his wife Sarah being alive. He went through every single emotion imaginable. At the start of the game, we caught him at what appeared to be his breaking point, quickly attacking a freaker nest in hopes of someone being home. It's a manifestation of what Boozer continues to call him out on, an apparent death wish. As we watch Deacon angrily bashing the heads of one of the freakers with the butt of his friend Boozer's shotgun, he's reminded of what these things took from him, the life he once had. The happiness and love he could completely lose himself comfortably in was all gone. Deacon's grief and loss isn't unique to just him though. The world of Days Gone is an apocalyptic one. Most of the world's population has been completely wiped out by a highly mutated virus, causing those who are infected to become feral cannibalistic creatures referred to as freakers. The freakers would come to dominate the globe, forcing what remains of humanity to live in fortified settlements, each with their own leaders, perceived way of doing things, and of course, views on each other. Deacon and his close friend Boozer would find a way to live in this new world, or as many others would come to see it, just surviving, not so much living.
This ring is a symbol of my love, and it is precious. It has no beginning and no end. I love you.
I believe it's appropriate to start from the beginning. While the way Days Gone presents its story is effective in its own way, it can become confusing when trying to retell it. So to best summarize the story and highlight aspects of Deacon's character that remain prominent during the main events of the game, let's begin with his time in the army. Although we don't see Deacon's military service in-game, it is referenced several times and at key moments, with one experience in particular affecting him very deeply. So much so that well over 2 years later, he struggles to even recall this event. It was so traumatic and emotionally scarring that he suffers PTSD from it, refusing to enter any body of water. Deacon shares that while he did complete a full tour in Afghanistan as part of the 10th Mountain Division, there's one mission in particular that will forever be ingrained in his mind. He and his unit were advancing on Mazar-e Sharif when they were ambushed by a Taliban group using flatbed trucks equipped with the Zu-23 modified anti-aircraft guns. Deacon's Humvee was destroyed and fell off a cliff into the Hari River, but Deacon himself was ejected from the vehicle, completely missing the river altogether. He would be knocked unconscious, and when he came to, he details spending the rest of his time swimming out into the wreckage and recovering every single body of his squad that he could, with it ending with him finally pulling out his Sergeant Tanner. Well over 2 years later, he still gets choked up telling Ricky about this event, and in cutscenes, the PTSD that he suffered from this event is very subtle, but it's there. In-game, Deacon can't swim for this very reason, but during his time when he's home dating Sarah, there's one key moment where Sarah's excited to go for a little private swim with Deacon, and he hesitates. Reluctant to talk about it, he just declines and says it's a long story.
Hey, there's more over here.
Wait, stop.
Oh, come on, the water's gonna be great.
Hold on.
What's wrong?
Well, I didn't mean stop that.
Come on, what is it?
It's a long story.
Well, that's okay. We can just walk. I like walking.
Later on at the end of the game, when he leads a full frontal assault on the Deschutes County militia, the bridge is completely blown out, and the only way to make his way into the heart of the camp is by swimming across. An action he has no choice but to do. He glances at the water, is terrified, but takes a deep breath and reluctantly jumps in. This is one of the subtleties that truly enriched Deacon's complex character. After retiring from the army, Deacon bought a motorcycle, a symbol of freedom and escape from what he endured in the military. After some time, he would find some work as a mechanic in a bike shop owned by Jack Morgan. Jack was the leader of the motorcycle club, the Mongrels. Jack took a liking to Deacon, eventually bringing him into the club as an enforcer. It was within this brotherhood that Deacon forged a profound bond with William Gray, better known as Boozer. Their friendship would very rapidly deepen, becoming so strong that they would consider each other true brothers. It was a bond that would even be cemented during one of the darkest times in Boozer's life. One fateful night, Boozer's wife tragically died in a drunken joyride, plunging Boozer into an abyss of grief. Desperate and despondent, Boozer began drinking himself to death. In a display of unwavering loyalty and solidarity, Deacon joined Boozer in his sorrow. Deacon would grab a bottle of whiskey and drink alongside his grieving friend, declaring that if Boozer was going to drink himself to death, Deacon would stand by his side and do the exact same thing, because that's what brothers do. He saved Boozer's life that night, an action the two of them would continue to do for each other in the years to come. While Deacon settled into the mongrel MC, patching in other members and making sure everyone followed the code of the Brotherhood, he would begin to date a young scientist and botanist named Sarah Whitaker. Sarah landed a job as a researcher for the bioengineering company Cloverdale. The company had just opened up a brand new lab in Iron Butte, Oregon, where some extremely rare plants are known to grow in the area. This would push her to transfer to this branch where one day her borrowed car broke down on the side of the road on her way to work. As luck would have it, Deacon would just so happen to come along as she was stranded. He would offer her a ride, and so would begin the romantic relationship. As with all relationships, Deacon and Sarah grew closer by sharing their interests, hobbies, and knowledge. Deacon taught Sarah how to ride a motorcycle, helping her gain the confidence to ride his bike, and he would even introduce her to his best friend, Boozer. Boozer and Sarah would soon become good friends, with Boozer affectionately calling her his little sister. In return, Sarah would teach Deacon about the various properties of plants, their effects on people, and their many medicinal uses. It's actually her intimate knowledge of lavender and its application as an ointment that she would share with Deacon that would become crucial in saving Boozer's life later on when he contracted a severe fever and blood poisoning from a badly burned arm. As time passed, Deacon became more committed to Sarah. He acquired the special rank and patch of Nomad, indicating a lesser involvement with the MC's dealings while remaining an active member. This allowed him to spend much more time with his future wife. It was a sweet gesture that Sarah emphasized she never asked for him to do, but it was a step towards Deacon's ultimate commitment to marrying her, something he would eventually come to do at the church in the town of Marion Forks. The only attendee during the church ceremony was Boozer, since Sarah's family didn't approve of her marriage to Deacon, and Deacon's only family was Boozer and the mongrels as a whole. The love and commitment between Deacon and Sarah were strong from the start, bolstered by mutual love and support from Boozer. This friendship and devotion connected the three of them on the day of the virus outbreak, the last day that the three of them would be together. But before discussing that fateful day, which I think also highlights aspects of Deacon's character that interestingly never fades through a pandemic, a time where so many people would lose their morals, values, and ethics, there's one more incident that we need to cover, and that's Deacon and Boozer helping Jack excommunicate a member from the mongrels. Jesse Williamson, a lower-ranking member of the MC, had killed another member over drugs. This was in clear violation of the club's rules, and consequently Jack decided that Jesse needed to be expelled. Since Deacon was the enforcer and Boozer was the sergeant-at-arms within this chapter, the two of them would hold Jesse down while Jack burned off his mongrel's tattoo off of his back, effectively stripping Jesse of his colors. Now, neither Boozer nor Deacon took any pleasure or pride in this act, but it would be something that would come to haunt them many years later. The physical scars, along with the shame and torment Jesse suffered at their hands, led him to seek freedom from the painful memory. This desire to forget who he was and what he had lost became the fundamental teaching Jesse would use to establish the Rest in Peace cult, later known as the Rippers. Jesse would adopt the single name of Carlos and use this cult to recruit those they considered lost after the pandemic destroyed society. Now, in some ways, you can see how it's an enticing idea. The cult worshipped the Freakers, completely admiring the fact that they don't remember who they were before. They're not held back by the painful memories of losing their closest loved ones or struggling to come to terms with the worst possible things that they had to do in order to survive. They are completely unbothered by it all. They view turning into a Freaker as a gift bestowed upon them, and they embrace the idea of becoming one with the Freakers. To reinforce this belief, cult members would get high on what is believed to be PCP, which increases their paranoia, detachment from reality, and tolerance to pain. In the meantime, Jesse falls into relative obscurity, unheard of until after the pandemic strikes and the rise of his cults begins. For Deacon, though, everything appears to be going relatively smoothly. He was married, had a wife who wasn't just successful but passionately involved with the work she was doing at Cloverdale, and he and Boozer continued to be close friends. It was quite a dream. perfect for someone attempting to settle into a somewhat normal life after his military experience and of course involvement with the mongrels. But this wouldn't last long. At work, Sarah's new intern by the name of David Gorman attempted to warn her about what their employer was up to.
And then all of this changed. They sealed everything off. They took away my clearance. God, David kept telling me. He kept telling me that something was wrong.
Okay. Who's David?
David Gorman. He was this research intern. You know what I said? I told him that we're a farm and we're high tech and all that shit, and that there are billions of dollars at stake, and to just leave it alone. And he didn't listen.
Despite Sarah's contract explicitly stating none of her research could be used for military purposes, the higher-ups at Cloverdale were slowly taking away clearance from many of the scientists at the facility, and they were beginning to use their research for a classified project. An intern by the name of David Gorman attempted to warn Sarah, who would just ignore his pleas. This would drive David to become desperate. He would manage to get past the security within the facility, acquire a sample of the virus Cloverdale was working on in private, and then he would arrange to discuss the private dealings happening at Cloverdale with a journalist, who he was meant to meet at an environmental convention in Portland. The whole idea was for Gorman to expose everything Cloverdale was working on in secret, but unknown to Gorman, he infected himself with the virus and thus infected everyone at the convention, who would all hop on planes, boats, and various forms of transportation, aiding the virus's spread globally. Within a few days, most of the world was infected with martial law being declared. And so we arrive to the final night Deacon, Boozer, and Sarah are together. Sarah and Deacon are making their way through a chaotic farewell, doing their best to avoid the swarms of infected roaming the streets. At some point, they would bypass a child who's balled up in the corner crying to themselves. Sarah would attempt to help the child, but the kid is already infected. She's in the process of slowly becoming a newt, and so in her altered state of mind, she would stab Sarah, with Sarah's stab wound eventually becoming septic, giving her a fever and hindering her ability to move. Eventually, Boozer would catch up to the pair, and evidently he too has suffered an injury. He has an open leg wound. And this is how we find Deacon in the predicament that he's in at the beginning of the game, placing Sarah on the Nero chopper, making sure that she receives a life-saving surgery while choosing to stay behind with Boozer, who wouldn't be able to survive on his own. But what isn't seen in the beginning is what happens after Boozer immediately catches up to them. The trio would take refuge in a building off the main roads, avoiding the infected swarms, but the building isn't empty. There's a man in a manic state. He's panicking, his wife was killed, and he accuses Deacon, Boozer, and Sarah for killing his wife. Boozer would distract the man who's firing off shots at them while Deacon sneaks up behind him. Deacon would attempt to reason with the man who is so stricken with grief of his wife being killed that Deacon has no other choice but to shoot him.
Hey, I'm unarmed. Get out! Now listen to me. My girl's out there, she's been stabbed. We're just trying to get to the roof. There's a helicopter.
You killed her!
So listen.
You killed my wife!
Oh, no. Look, I didn't know anything about your wife being killed. I'm sorry, sir. Do it again.
My wife! You killed her! Stop that!
Jesus.
Deke, what happened to you? What's wrong?
Let's go.
As an ex-serviceman who saw active combat and coming home from the service being a part of a biker gang that's heavily implied to be involved in criminal activity, for him to be visibly shaking over killing someone who he could possibly sympathize with, it shows killing isn't easy, no matter what. Many games depict shooting another person for the sake of survival, especially in zombie games, and doing it in the heat of the moment is something that's easy, but that's not always the case. As an outlaw and military man taking a life, even one that threatens you and your loved ones, albeit more out of panic and not outright malice, is still scarring. To then make the difficult decision to leave your wife on a helicopter, trusting that you made the right call and hoping to reunite with her at a predetermined safe zone, to only find the zone overrun with no sign of her survival or death would understandably lead to an obsession. Deacon would create a tombstone at the Nero checkpoint where he believed Sarah would be waiting for him, visiting the site and talking to his presumed dead wife for the next 2 years. He would later confide in Iron Mike from the Lost Lake camp that he felt relieved when he placed Sarah on that chopper, implying a deep sense of guilt over their last moments together. Guilt, desperation, love, sadness, denial, whatever the mix of emotions driving him, Deacon would never really stop holding out faith that his wife was still alive. He and Boozer would fall into becoming drifters, and in the early days post-Outbreak, a woman by the name of Ricky would begin to ride with the two of them. The trio would appear to get along quite well, but in hindsight it was Deacon's obsession with his wife that would inadvertently cause Ricky to decide to leave and settle down in a camp. Ricky would describe watching Deacon stay up one night, all night long staring at something, completely wrapped in this one thing, unable to fall asleep. And we know in hindsight, the object that Deacon appeared to be so focused in happened to be a photo of Sarah that Deacon had on his person. While she didn't know the exact object, the sentiments and the idea behind it I think was quite apparent to Ricky. According to Ricky, watching Deacon stare at this object all night long highlighted to her that so many people in this world are lost. And unlike many of them, and unlike Deacon, who's either stuck looking back in what or who was taken from them or attempting to run away from their past, Ricky would rather move forward, accept the new way of the world, and contribute where she could in hopes to one day recapture the magic of the little things that mattered before the world was taken from them. And so, trying her best to avoid the never-ending cycle of mourning the people she'd never see again, she decided to become a leading figure in the Lost Lake camp, eventually rising to somewhat second in command behind the camp's leader, Iron Mike. Now, there's no exact timeline and everything, but it is worth noting that during the time Boozer and Deacon were staying, and I do say staying with quotations as they made it clear to never really be a part of one camp, sticking to the whole drifter mentality, Boozer and Deacon would continue to accept jobs for the two other camps in the area. There was Mark Copeland, leader of the Copeland camp settled on a lake, that were notorious for scavenging and scrapping anything they could under the guise of salvaging. They're the ones that knowingly take Deacon's bike at the start of the game and attempt to do the same thing to Boozer's once he left his bike unprotected much later. Now, Copeland is a strong conspiracy theorist with an intense hatred for the government and Nero, the agency that was meant to help save everyone in the wake of the outbreak. Copeland's camp, as with many others in the game, demonstrate one of the methods of surviving we typically see in post-apocalyptic worlds: doing whatever it takes to survive as necessary. Copeland's camp is all about opportunists. They're essentially all scavengers. Despite knowing a bike or part or anything of use may belong to someone they know, if left unprotected, it's completely fair game to them. Tucker's camp, on the other hand, in Hot Springs, operated under slave labor. She would use Deacon and Boozer to find workers for her. This is precisely how Deacon would come across a girl by the name of Lisa, completely alone and abandoned in the empty town of Marion Forks. Lisa would come to remind Deacon of Sarah's little sister Emma, and because of that he would develop a very soft spot for Lisa, even realizing the work he was doing for Tucker was morally gray when Lisa would tell him Tucker refused to let her leave. Deacon would try to remedy his mistake of bringing her to a slave labor camp with a thunder rock as a gift and remind her of some fond memories Lisa had before everything fell apart, but it was a little too late.
Because it's not safe.
I gotta turn in. They make us get up really early for work.
We'll circle back to Lisa, as she's significant in her own way, but Deacon and Boozer's work as slavers for Tucker is what seemingly resulted in the pair being forced to leave Lost Lake camp, as Iron Mike wanted nothing to do with it. Iron Mike ran his camp more aligned to how everything was before the outbreak happened. Yes, there was a farm that people would have to work at, but that's just it. If they wanted to leave, they were allowed to leave. However, the world that everyone finds himself in now is much more difficult, so at the end of the day, you still have a role to play. You can stay, but you can't really stay for free if you can help it. Wanting nothing to do with it, whatever Deacon and Boozer were doing with Tucker, Iron Mike would tell the pair they were no longer welcomed. It appeared this was somewhat fine for the pair. Boozer was okay going anywhere with his brother at his side, while Deacon was descending deeper and deeper into an angry, numb depression. He'd appear to visit Sarah's makeshift grave more and more. He'd start to talk to her more and more. The only constant communication he had with anyone was that of Boozer, who he helped establish a camp with on the top of O'Leary Mountain. As they continued to accept jobs for Tucker and Copeland, doing whatever to just get enough camp credits to get by without giving any thought to what the job was, Deacon would begin to become more and more reckless. 2 years of absolutely no success in finding his wife was taking its toll. If it wasn't for Boozer, he most likely would have been killed a long time ago. Boozer was all he had, and it was Boozer getting hurt with his condition weakening that would cause Deacon to somewhat snap out of being so numb to everything.
I heard him. I heard voices.
Oh, shit.
I mean, you heard him, right?
No, I didn't hear shit, Boozer. You
No,
get blood poisoning.
I do not.
Yes, you do, Boozer. Just take a look.
I don't need to take a look.
Come on, we gotta get you some help.
Look, I don't need some.
Come on.
Targeted by the Rippers, Boozer was cornered with his entire right arm burned while he was held down. Deacon would arrive in time to save his friend's life, both from the Rippers and an approaching horde, but Boozer did suffer third-degree burns to his arm. The next few days, despite Deacon doing all that he could, his friend's condition was only getting worse. He would acquire fever, experience sweating profusely, a pounding headache, and delusions of hearing things. Deacon would begin to pick up extra work from both Copeland and Tucker in order to acquire enough supplies for Deacon and Boozer to move further north, and while doing so, he would raid a nearby abandoned Nero checkpoint to secure some bandages, and he would even utilize some freshly picked lavender to apply to his friend's arm in hopes of helping the third-degree burns that he suffered. But it was sadly all in vain. All he could really do was reassure his friend to get some rest, heal up, and then the two of them, whenever Boozer's up to it, would move north in hopes of escaping the painful memories that this region has locked them down in. For better, or in Boozer's eyes for worse, while Deacon was out alone doing all this work, he would manage to acquire a Nero radio. Nero has been believed to have been wiped out for quite some time now. Their checkpoints litter the landscape as a telling sign of their inability to protect anyone, let alone themselves or even attempt to stop the outbreak. As it turns out though, they're still around. They have running helicopters, a researcher, and an active field team, with one such researcher being called O'Brien. O'Brien was the Nero researcher Deacon left his wife Sarah with 2 years ago in the helicopter. Every known camp Sarah could possibly have ended up at appeared to have all been overrun with no such thing as a survivor. But if the man Deacon left his wife with is indeed alive, then perhaps Sarah is too. While Boozer lay bedridden, Deacon would continue to trail every Nero helicopter that he could, documenting every finding with his brother Boozer. Boozer's reactions and input is where a lot of what the two of them have been through is really shared. Boozer doesn't really sound excited about Deacon wasting so much of his time trailing these helicopters or reviving his search with Sarah, getting his hopes so high only for them to be dashed again. Even when Deacon goes to visit Sarah's grave, Boozer comes off disapproving. Now, it cannot be stressed enough that Boozer's disapproval is out of genuine concern. It's more within the line of acknowledging how unhealthy it really is to continue to drive yourself mad, isolate yourself, and try so hard to chase what's effectively a ghost. It's the very thing in their own ways Iron Mike, Ricky, and Boozer see Deacon doing. He's clearly of use. He can be extremely effective after, spending so much time out in the shit fighting off rippers, bandits, and freakers. If he ever found comfort within a camp, not only would he benefit from possibly moving on, but helping others that could really use that help. All three in their own ways would try to get him to understand the self-destructive path of having this tunnel vision of finding Sarah. Iron Mike would tell him what does it matter if everyone else is dead, effectively banishing him a second time from Lost Lake Camp and forbidding him to ever return. Ricky would also plead with Deacon to stop being afraid of people relying on him and just accept the courage to stay at Lost Lake Camp with them, to help them, to stop withering away by himself as a drifter. And then there's Boozer, who would eventually tease Deacon, bluntly getting him to realize it's time to move on.
Seriously, what happened to Sarah? Huh? Where's your old lady, Deacon?
Where's your old lady?
Huh? Stay down, brother. Had enough? Where's your old lady, Deke?
She's dead, Boozer. Sarah's dead.
Yeah, and she's been dead a long time, so don't you think that you mourned her long enough?
Deacon does eventually admit his wife is gone, but that's not until he makes contact with O'Brien and does various recon jobs for him. In the meantime, with Boozer's condition getting worse and Deacon acknowledging the morality of Tucker's camp, he would eventually come to make contact with Ricky. Originally, this would begin because of Lisa. She managed to escape Tucker's camp and would fall victim to the Rippers, who held her as a captive. There, she would have a horrifying experience almost not entirely unlike Boozer. Where Boozer got his entire arm burned, though, Lisa would be tied up and have the Ripper's call signs carved into her skin. Deacon would rescue Lisa, who, despite everything that she's gone through with the Rippers, was still reluctant to go back to Tucker's camp. Deacon would sympathize with their plight, encouraging him to re-establish contact with Ricky. Since the last time they talked, Deacon was involved with Tucker's slave trade, but seeing him do what can only be seen as ethical and a selfless decision by delivering Lisa to Ricky, Ricky would come to see this as some sort of change within Deacon. All he wanted was to ensure Lisa's safety, asking for nothing in return, not even camp credits. He knew that Lost Lake Camp could provide the protection she really needed. And for the first time in what has perhaps been this entire time, Deacon appeared to care for someone other than his wife, or Boozer. Deacon delivering Lisa to Lost Lake Camp would be crucial in Iron Mike allowing both Deacon and Boozer to eventually stay. It appeared as a fundamental change, or at least give some sort of hope of a fundamental change within Deacon that would encourage both Iron Mike and Ricky to give them a second chance. It's a second chance the two of them couldn't hope to screw up. Addie, the doctor at Lost Lake, was the only doctor within 100 miles, and the camp itself was the only place they could hope to find antibiotics to save Boozer's life. Initially, Deacon would go about quote-unquote asking for help by sneaking into the camp's infirmary and trying to take the antibiotics without being seen. That was the original plan until he was caught by Addie and Ricky. Ricky's understandably upset by Deacon just feigning to change by bringing them Lisa, and accuses Deacon of stealing narcotics for Tucker. She then challenges Deacon's code of not hurting or killing unarmed or defenseless women. It's another small aspect of Deacon that could be seen various times throughout the game. In another small way, Deacon holding on to his code of protecting women still humanizes Deacon, and it does it more than other people really give him credit for. 2 years of being constantly vigilant, looking over your shoulders, and not really being able to trust anyone you would think would harden him, making it much easier to do what's basically become second nature to so many people now, just killing without a second thought. If someone could pose as a threat, why not just finish them off or leave them alone? The struggle is bad enough to ensure your own survival, why make it harder caring for strangers? Perhaps it's out of hope that someone could have come across Sarah and decided to help her, seeing a poor and defenseless version of his wife in these women, or just taking pity on them at face value. Whatever the case, it's not something that's just said and forgotten. We actually see Deacon follow this code. He spares a woman at one point that held him at gunpoint, but since she's out of ammo, Deacon allows her to live, saying if he has a choice, he wouldn't kill anyone in her position. Later on, while Deacon is running jobs for Lost Lake Camp in order to earn his and Boozer's keep, he ventures into Ripper territory with Schizo, head of Lost Lake Security. They were on a secret mission to acquire detonation cords for some dynamite they had that was deep within Ripper territory. The two of them would come across a woman that was tied to a post by the Rippers as a sacrifice to the Freakers, and Deacon would intervene. He would run the risk of either alerting the Rippers to their presence or even inadvertently bringing all the Freakers down on them, but it didn't matter. He refused to leave this woman to her fate. Unfortunately, both of her legs were broken and there was nothing they could do. So Deacon would then perform a mercy killing on her, leading to what I would consider to be one of the saddest moments in the entire game.
I got her!
Shut up!
Her legs are broken. She ain't going anywhere, bro. We gotta get a move on. Just do it.
Hey, sweetheart. Sweetheart? It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Shh. Shh. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Despite the negative perception Ricky, Iron Mike, and everyone else at Lost Lake have of him, he still has a heart. Just like killing the man the night everything went to shit, killing isn't something he can still stomach or find incredibly easy. It's still circumstantial. Even in this position, where given this poor girl's circumstances, a mercy killing like this would be the best case scenario for her. Even if the Freakers weren't called or they were deep in Ripper territory, what kind of life could she really hope to live with 2 legs completely broken? As Ricky challenges Deacon on his strict code of attacking unarmed women, Eddie would reveal to Ricky he wasn't stealing narcotics at all. The medication that he had in his hand was antibiotics to save Boozer's life. Deacon would reveal that his best friend was hanging on by a thread, and if he had any other option, he wouldn't be here. His friend would inevitably die out in the wilderness, and he was far from any condition to be able to ride anywhere, let alone live the next few days if he didn't receive immediate help. Coming here was his only resort. At Addie's behest, Ricky and Deacon would go out to retrieve Boozer, bring him back to camp where Addie would agree to treat Boozer so long as Deacon goes and speaks with Iron Mike and pleads his case on why they should be allowed back into the camp that they disgraced so long ago. With additional convincing by Ricky, reminding Iron Mike that Deacon was the one that brought them Lisa and the camp could always use another writer, Iron Mike would allow the pair to stay so long as they needed, so long as the 2 of them helped wherever they were called. And so would begin what in a few ways was Deacon and Boozer's new way of life. Boozer would eventually get his arm amputated here in order to prevent his infection from spreading, ending his ability to ride a motorcycle and as such confining his effectiveness to working out at Lost Lake's farm. While Deacon would be actively encouraged by both Ricky and Iron Mike to stay, to see the beauty in what they're doing here. They would both encourage him to let go of his idea of being this drifter tormented by the loss of his wife. He doesn't have to continue withering away. It's okay to settle down, to try to move on and see things more in Iron Mike's way of doing things. Not just immediately resorting to violence, instead giving people fair trials and banishing them rather than outright killing them. The time spent at Lost Lake Camp was a turning point for everyone. Deacon would help the camp like never before, helping them get running water, electricity, and even antibiotics for the camp while pitching a plan to Iron Mike on trapping a horde in a nearby cave and thus making the entire area much safer to travel in. He would come to know Iron Mike and Ricky on a much more personal level, gaining their trust and winning over their favor. For a moment, he would even completely give up the chase of his wife. Accepting Lost Lake would in fact be the best place for him and his friend to settle down in. But as we know, his time at Lost Lake Camp isn't the end of his journey.
Freaks aren't going to be around forever. Now when they're gone, we're going to need some folks around here to help pick up the pieces. Hey, look, hey. I don't like Carlos and his Rippers any more than I like Tucker or Copeland and his goddamn truthers. All right, but here's the thing, Deke. I'm not going out of my way to kill any of them. I've had my share of killing.
Deacon was brought to Lost Lake for Boozer's sake. He was constantly concerned about Boozer, regularly checking in on his physical health and closely monitoring his mental state, especially after Boozer, in a drunken episode, tried to take an entire horde with his bare fists. This prompted Deacon to make the same pledge he did the night Boozer's wife died, vowing to go out the same way his brother did. However, Boozer wasn't Deacon's only focus. During this period, Deacon was closing the chapter of his life that he'd be stuck in for the last 2 years. While Boozer remained a very high priority of his, Deacon maintained more steady contact with O'Brien, hoping to get closer to finding Sarah. He would trail more and more Nero research teams for O'Brien, who in exchange for the information Deacon gathered would dig up any records of what happened to Sarah and then pass that off to Deacon. It's work Deacon would consider extremely tedious and aggravating, as he only cared for immediate results on where Sarah was. However, the information he was gathering from Nero research teams would be crucial in boosting his own personal knowledge on the Freakers and how best to utilize this knowledge to help Lost Lake and eventually the Deschutes County militia that he would later fall into. In the meantime, Deacon would do his best to uphold his side of the deal with Lost Lake. In exchange of being allowed to stay there, Deacon would be running jobs for Ricky and Skizzo. Skizzo was the camp's head of security. He not only didn't trust or like Deacon and Boozer, but he was doing his best to undermine the leadership of Iron Mike. Now, the relationship between Skizzo and Deacon can get quite easy to fall into explaining each tit-for-tat situation, so the best way to easily explain everything quickly is Iron Mike had a very unstable peace treaty with Carlos and his Rippers. Carlos knew Deacon and Boozer were alive, but from what it sounds like, he didn't know exactly where they were. Aware to some extent that they were drifters working with Copeland Tucker, and Lost Lake, Carlos would encourage his Rippers to do anything they could to capture the two of them alive, even if that meant violating the peace treaty that he and Iron Mike had in place. Skizzo believed Carlos and his Rippers were a bunch of junkies who couldn't be reasoned with and was encouraging Iron Mike to attack them before the Rippers attacked Lost Lake. Iron Mike refused. He ran Lost Lake like a pacifist. This would cause some constant friction between him and Skizzo, who saw Iron Mike as weak and a liability to the ultimate protection of Lost Lake. Out of everybody within Lost Lake, the only person that knew why Iron Mike ran the camp the way that he did was Deacon. Deacon and Iron Mike would butt heads for the same reason Skizzo would with Iron Mike. Iron Mike's stubbornness and giving people second chances wasn't the best call as far as they saw things. But with Deacon's increasing contributions to Lost Lake, Iron Mike would finally open up to him on why exactly he ran Lost Lake in a specific way. After witnessing so much pointless death at Sherman's camp before establishing Lost Lake, Iron Mike would be left scarred, vowing to do whatever he could to spare more lives from being needlessly pissed away. It's a warning to Deacon. Doing what may be the right thing isn't the easiest call, but it's paramount people are still alive and kept around so that one day they can all move forward together as civilized people. It's crucial. Whatever Deacon's decision is, the benefit and well-being of others should be taken into consideration. Iron Mike's openness of what he experienced at Sherman's camp would, in my opinion, be just as important as Ricky pleading with Deacon to stay and help everyone. Where Ricky came from a more emotional approach to look forward and stop looking back, Iron Mike was a little more practical. He wasn't weak, he was a man who saw enough death and wanted the best for everyone. That's something Deacon was able to understand, and while not always agreeing with him, he understood it. Skizzo, on the other hand, would use Deacon as a way to agitate the Rippers to prove Iron Mike and the rest of Lost Lake they needed to attack the Rippers. And he would use these instances to the rest of the Cap Council that Iron Mike is unfit for leadership. Skizzo was all around a thorn in everyone's side. After more Ripper sightings near Lost Lake and what came off as accidental skirmishes between both factions began to ramp up, Iron Mike would send Skizzo to negotiate some sort of agreement with Carlos, or at least to ensure that the peace treaty they had in place was still in effect. On the surface, it appeared everything went fine according to that meeting, but it was later revealed Skizzo promised Carlos both Deacon and Boozer in exchange for a permanent peace settlement. Carlos would accept the deal, as it's them he has a personal grudge with, so Skizzo would set up Deacon to be captured under the guise of the two of them venturing into Ripper territory to secure the detonation cords for the dynamite that they had, which was originally meant to be placed in a cave to seal a horde of freakers into, but we'll come back to that in just a second. After grabbing the cords, Skizzo would knock Deacon out and leave him for the Rippers to find him. Deacon would eventually come to, tied to the same post the woman was that he saved before, albeit this time inside Carlos's compound. For the first time during all these years, Deacon would finally meet the infamous man known as Carlos. He'd get a good look at him and he'd realize that this was actually Jesse Williamson, the man he and Boozer held down when Jack burned the mongrel's tattoo off of his back. As payback, Jesse would burn one of Deacon's arms, but shares that they won't continue until Boozer's here. So Carlos disappears to head an assault on Lost Lake Camp in hopes of taking Boozer as a prisoner. Deacon would be left tied up, forced to wait until Carlos returns with his friend. However, he's unexpectedly paid a visit.
It is you. I saw them bring you in.
Lisa.
No. That's not my name. I'm on the path. I don't have a name anymore. None of us do. Everyone I ever cared about is dead.
Lisa. Listen to me.
Do you know why we want to be like them? Like the freaks?
No.
It's because they don't remember what they've lost. Who they've lost.
Lisa ran away from Lost Lake some time ago, and while Deacon went after her, he was never able to find where exactly she ended up. As it turns out, she willingly joined the Rippers. She was tormented by her memories and wanted so badly to forget them. An enticing promise, though through all the pain and misery she wanted to erase, she never forgot Deacon. She'd free one of his arms and leave behind a knife as a form of gratitude. Then she would slip away. A few moments later, when it's discovered Deacon is free, Lisa's about to be killed when Deacon saves her life again. He encourages her to disappear, which she would. She'd never be heard or seen from again until the end of the game when she appears at Lost Lake as a drifter, but until then, Deacon must hurry to Lost Lake. When he arrives, Lost Lake is a war zone. Rippers are everywhere. Buildings are on fire, gunfire can be heard from all corners of the camp. Deacon would make his way over to the infirmary where there is a standoff between Ricky and some Rippers who have Addie as a hostage. Before anything happens, a ceasefire is called. Carlos, Skizzo, and Iron Mike are all stuck in a standoff with Boozer in Ripper custody. Deacon appears, brings the knife to Skizzo's throat, and forces him to tell everyone how the attack on the camp is all his doing, with the promise of Deacon and Boozer being Carlos's reward for the taking. Iron Mike would confirm this with Carlos, and then he would demand that Carlos and all his Rippers get the hell out of his camp. Deacon nor Boozer are going anywhere.
I made a deal with Carlos, okay? Mike. But it wasn't. It wasn't to sell out the camp. I swear. It was just them. The two of them. Him and Boozer. That's all that he wants. Just them.
Is what he says true? About you making a deal?
Only lost tell lies. Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So we give you Deke, William, biker boats, whatever the fuck you want to call them. But you leave Lost Lake alone.
You will rest in peace. You have my word.
And that's something, isn't it? Your word. Grand fucking poobah of the R.I.P.
Hey, we come here under a flag of truce.
Truce my ass! This is my camp. My people. You don't come here with some blood-stained flag of truce and demand shit! Not from me! Now, I don't care what you think these boys have done. I don't care why you want them. All I know is you're not getting them.
If Carlos leaves now, as far as Mike is concerned, their treaty is still in effect. And so, content with that, Carlos leaves. Understandably, Deacon and Boozer are pissed off at the entire event basically being sold off for really only Skizzo's gain at this point, but Iron Mike intervenes. He strips Skizzo of his position as head of security, and he orders that he be locked up. Despite so many being killed and the camp being damn near burned to the ashes, all because of Skizzo, Iron Mike still says that he wants to hold a fair trial for Skizzo. Outright killing him, no matter what he's done, is not the way that they're doing things, and it's not the way that he's gonna allow Boozer or Deacon to take care of this situation. It's Iron Mike's to do with. Boozer and Deacon would oblige, but never content with standing aside, they would instead take the dynamite and detonation cords that were originally planned for sealing an entire horde, and instead would venture back into Ripper territory and place it on the dam that was overlooking the entire valley. Essentially, they planned to blow up the dam and with it drown the entire Ripper faction, completely wiping them off the face of the map. And then the two of them would storm Carlos's compound and finish what Carlos started. Well, Boozer would plant all the dynamite and would help Deacon storm at least the open area surrounding Carlos's compound because of his inability to get to an elevated position because of his arm. It was Deacon that would have to deal with Carlos in a one-on-one fight, besting him and slitting his throat.
I see it. I see it.
Hey! What's going on? Damn it!
The path is clear to me now.
Deke, talk to me!
Yeah, me too.
Rest in peace, Jesse.
Killing Carlos and ending the Rippers would eliminate an entire threat from the region. The cult would be non-existent from this point moving forward. With Jesse Williamson or Carlos now dead, Deacon and Boozer would also not have to worry about looking over the shoulders, wondering if some crazed cultists are going to be coming after them, suffering a similar attack to what Boozer had to endure at the beginning of the game with his arm. But this would come at a slight cost. Deacon and Boozer would kill countless of people doing this, an action Iron Mike would be passionately against. Regardless of what Carlos and his Rippers have done, that is not something Iron Mike would approve of. So, while Deacon and Boozer are off taking care of Carlos and the Rippers, Iron Mike would let Schizo free and tell him to never come back to Lost Lake again. Deacon would eventually find out and would be angry with Iron Mike for making that decision, especially after Iron Mike has said that he was going to have a fair trial, but Iron Mike admits he would not have had a fair trial. He would have been killed, which possibly would have been the fair thing to do, but he told Deacon he saved another life, and that's something that at the end of the day he's still content with. With seemingly all threats save the Freakers and a few bandit attacks here and there now cleared, now it was time to rebuild. Deacon had made what he believed to be his last contact with O'Brien, who confirmed Sarah did indeed survive his 6-hour surgery to take care of her stab wound, but after her surgery she was moved to a camp near Tumult that was overrun. Everyone was killed. The only people who made it out were those with very high clearance, Nero and Fed personnel, who were allowed to be saved. Everyone else perished. Upset at the news, Deacon would finally say goodbye to his wife by heading to the church they got married at and burning it to the ground. Deacon would do his best to move on, rebuilding Lost Lake in the wake of the Ripper's attack, and it would seem he and Boozer would begin to be happy, no longer stuck, as Iron Mike put it, chasing ghosts, or looking backwards, only relying on one another and caring little for anybody else. Now, there was a full community that they counted on and counted on them. Everything was good until one day, Deacon saw Ricky teaching Addie how to ride a motorcycle.
No, this is your clutch.
I know where the clutch is.
All right, do you want me to show you how to do this or not?
Yes, but I know where the clutch is.
Okay, fine. All right, you do it yourself, okay?
Fine.
This would trigger a deep core memory within Deacon. He would recall teaching Sarah how to ride a motorcycle, and on one particular day, he remembered teaching her how to ride his motorcycle outside of Cloverdale, a facility that she had federal clearance at. With renewed vigor in finding his wife, Deacon would contact O'Brien, informing him Sarah's federal clearance, demanding him that he do more digging. And after a few days, O'Brien would get back and tell Deacon he has to meet with him. There's something that he has to hand him. When Deacon arrives, O'Brien hands over Sarah's badge from Cloverdale. Deacon was right, she had Class 4 federal clearance and did in fact evacuate with a recon team east of Fort Rock. Deacon would demand they take him there, getting ready to hop on the helicopter, but O'Brien says that they can't. That base was overrun a year ago by a local militia. Nero has no idea where their main camp is. The best he can do is guess it's somewhere around Cradle Lake, but the area is a no-fly zone. The militia have acquired an entire arsenal of weaponry from a National Guard weapons cache, and they shoot on sight. With this new information, Deacon would return to his tunnel vision, absolutely determined to find what happened to Sarah. At this point, you can say he's completely broken free from his death wish. Long gone are the days of just surviving. He's no longer alone anymore. He's established much more trust with Iron Mike, Ricky, and Addie than he ever has before, and as such he could genuinely stay and stop this seemingly futile, never-ending pursuit. Boozer, after all, was doing much better here. But despite all of this, Deacon would go to Iron Mike, who he recalled mentioned knowing a way over the Tilson Pass, a region that in the wake of the outbreak has been sealed off for the last 2 years. Iron Mike would initially refuse to help Deacon. To him, it'll result in either Deacon getting killed, or with the loss of Deacon's help, Lost Lake itself would become extremely vulnerable, especially with so many dead after the Ripper attack and Schizo, the former head of security, now gone. The camp doesn't need all the help that they could get. In an effort to appeal to Iron Mike's more emotional side, Deacon would open up, revealing that he has to at least try. He felt relieved placing Sarah on the helicopter all that time ago, and never knowing what happened has been eating at him since. Ricky and Iron Mike would both be disappointed in Deacon's decision to leave, with Iron Mike going so far to even ban Deacon from ever coming back, no matter what happens, if Iron Mike does show him the way over the Tilson Pass into the south. If Deacon has to go pursue after Sarah, Iron Mike will not stop him, but he won't allow him to return. He disapproves of Deacon chasing this ghost, wanting him to be much more practical, but he understands where Deacon is coming from. Going after his wife that could be dead isn't going to make him whole, and even if she is alive, what good is it if everyone else is killed? It's a selfish mission that may be extremely futile, but Iron Mike is no one to stop Deacon, so he agrees and shows him the way over the pass.
We wrote out a farewell. Without Sarah, without Jack, or anyone. I knew that we were leaving everything behind. Everything that mattered was gone. Except this.
You're a nomad again, huh?
Yep, I guess I am.
Deacon would leave Boozer at Lost Lake, and he would ride alone on his mission to find Sarah. It wouldn't take long for him to make any contact with the militia, though. As soon as he made it on the other side of the pass, Deacon would be greeted by some militiamen being attacked by an infected bear. Deacon would save the men, earning him the pleasure of meeting Captain Corey. Corey was head of the Diamond Lake Outpost, second in command to the head of the militia, who was simply referred to as the Colonel. Corey would be grateful for Deacon's help in saving his men, but Deacon would become a little bit more standoffish when he realizes Corey was wearing Deacon's mongrel's ring, the same one he gave to Sarah the night he placed her on the helicopter. Deacon was aware that Sarah's last known location to Nero was overrun by the militia, who sounded as if they have no love for any type of Nero personnel. So Deacon would become even more hesitant to share any information on who he was, where he came from, or who exactly he was looking for, as he did make it clear that he was looking for someone. However, in the meantime, none of that seemed to matter. Corey needed help tracking a man that went AWOL. If Deacon can prove his usefulness here, Corey would put in a personal recommendation to be sworn in to the militia. Deacon would help Corey track the man down with flying colors. In the process, he would reveal to Corey that he was an ex-serviceman. Deacon would shed a little more light on his tour in Afghanistan as part of the 10th Mountain Division, to which Corey would respond that he too was an ex-serviceman. He was part of the Air Force, and he was on vacation here in Oregon when the outbreak erupted. Corey would open up about his wife Carrie, who had passed away, but Deacon wouldn't return the gesture, saying his wife's name was Beth and he doesn't have any picture of her. Corey would eventually turn out to be one of the few people Deacon would actually come to respect and open up to about everything, but in the meantime, Deacon continued to share little with the militia. Having no care in the world on the Colonel's holy war against the Freakers, all he was interested in was finding Sarah. With a small moment of personal memories shared between Deacon and Corey behind them, Deacon would be placed in front of the Colonel, who would then inspect this new batch of recruits. The Colonel was a strict disciplinarian and somewhat religious fanatic, believing tattoos were the sign of the devil's hold on people. Before anyone could have any hope of being a part of his beloved militia, they would need his approval. As such, the Colonel would reject Crystal, a woman who wasn't just a little bit combative at the idea of being brought to the militia against her will, but she was an ex-convict covered in tattoos. As such, the Colonel deemed her unfit for service, sending her to the militia's work camp. Deacon would have possibly met the same fate had the Colonel not caught the tattoo on his hand, a dedicated marking to his time in the service. The militia was in dire need of people who had some form of genuine military experience. Because of this, and Corey's own glowing recommendation attesting to Deacon's usefulness out in the shit, Deacon would be sworn into the militia, even skipping up to the rank of corporal, which would have an immediate benefit. Immediately after swearing Deacon in, the Colonel would share what he has called a holy war against the Freakers. He has a plan on evening the odds. Here, at the militia's main camp, he has a research team working tirelessly on evening the odds against these unholy creatures. Unfortunately, the Colonel hasn't had much success in finding recruits that were effective enough at locating and properly scavenging the supplies his research team required in order to effectively continue their work. Deacon would be assigned to the pair as their somewhat personal assistant. The first of the two introduced to Deacon would be Weaver, the camp's leading chemical engineer. He's working on perfecting a recipe for napalm Molotovs. It's a tool that, once zeroed in on, would allow the militia to effectively wipe out entire hordes. It's a plan the Colonel and much of the militia are readily getting behind of, a full frontal assault against the beings that had humanity on the brink of extinction for the last 2 years. It's one that shows a little more promise than the other half of the research team, which, according to the Colonel, is actually a bioweapon. If it turns out to be successful in the off chance, it would completely wipe out the Freakers and do so in a way that would save lives and spare tons of ammunition. When Deacon is introduced to this researcher, 2 years of constant searching would finally come to an end.
Lieutenant Whitaker, this is Corporal St. John. He's a new member of Corey's unit. He's got some experience out in the shit.
You're supposed to be dead.
Hey.
You're dead.
It's okay.
You're dead.
I'm right here.
Wait a second. I don't understand. I couldn't find
thought
you.
You had died, and
No, we were overrun.
Who's overrun?
And we had to go south. Nero, they said
Nero.
that no one made
I
it
found
out.
O'Brien, and I
Farewell
found a
was
way
overrun. They said that everybody
over the
was
mountain,
dead.
And I didn't think that
I never thought I would see you
ever
again.
see you again.
Initially, they're both in awe at realizing the other is in fact alive. It's a touching reunion that quickly transitions into Deacon wanting to ride out with Sarah. But she refuses. The militia are fighting a war. One Sarah feels she can contribute to. She's found a purpose here. While it's a touching moment, Sarah refusing to leave, believing she can be of use and make a difference while Deacon is unsure, perfectly shows that they're equally happy to finding each other again. But to an extent, Sarah has already mourned him and accepted the reality of the world that they live in. Deacon was barely going through the process of mourning his wife when he got the extra hope of her actually being alive after all. He was so hell-bent on finding her, there was really no idea of what to do next. As he said, they can pick a direction and they'll just disappear. It subtly highlights that tunnel vision of his. If Sarah was found, everything would be okay, but that's not how the world is now. Faced with really no other option, Deacon would begin to run errands for Sarah and Weaver. Deacon's time here is complicated to say the least. He can't openly address Sarah as his wife or show any sign of knowing her beforehand, never mind any type of affection. He's already been warned about the colonel's feelings of fraternizing amongst the ranks, and he's made a deliberate effort to make sure no one knew anything about the two of them. As far as Corey knew it, Deacon's wife's name was Beth, and she had been dead for quite some time. And because of the militia's strict adherence to rank and file of the military, he wasn't allowed to outright reject any jobs he didn't want to do, especially by Weaver. That was taking time away from seeing Sarah and helping her with her research so the two of them can get the hell out of there. Sarah would also not display any affection or even appreciation for Deacon that wasn't uncharacteristic of an officer and her subordinate. Understandably, it'll begin to frustrate Deacon. He'd grown to Sarah about the whole military charade and not wanting to just run errands and not see or hear from her again until she needs something. Aware of Deacon's dissatisfaction that was only growing by the day, she would use the opportunity of acquiring a centrifuge from the local community college as a means to finally speak openly with him. Well, it was a great moment for the two of them to finally be able to speak openly without the fear of being found out or suffering any kind of repercussions for either lying or actually knowing each other. It'd be a moment where Deacon would come to realize Sarah, as so many others in the world, has changed. She's fine scavenging, getting around in a dangerous environment, and even shooting an assault rifle. A far cry from when he first met her and she couldn't even fire a pistol into the air without having a panic attack. It's one of the two moments that would later harden his idea that no matter what happens, she will be okay. She's not some helpless woman on the side of the road. She's adept enough in survival to see the next day. One other major moment worth noting during Deacon and Sarah's time together here at the community college is they end up coming across a classroom filled with dead bodies. The people within this room all killed themselves. They poisoned themselves by ingesting a poisonous flower that grows locally by the name of hemlock. Hemlock is the very flower Sarah would later use to poison the colonel, brewing a tea out of it and giving him the spiked tea under the guise of it being the usual tea she gives him for digestion. The other moment assuring Deacon Sarah would be alright happens when her field test fails miserably. After bringing Sarah the centrifuge, the pair would then venture to Sarah's old place of employment at Cloverdale, where they would retrieve a DNA synthesizer. With the proper equipment, all Sarah now needed was a subject to test her quote-unquote weapon on. Deacon would bring her a live newt, and with it in her custody, the test would be able to commence. After administering her quote-unquote weapon, the newt would die almost instantly. To Deacon, this was a resounding success. What other outcome could you hope to ask for when you're working on a bioweapon? But Sarah was angry, frustrated. It failed miserably, and that's just it. She reveals to Deacon that she hasn't been working on a bioweapon, she's working on a cure. In this context, the kid she just experimented on was killed thanks to her, and that was her words explicitly, referring to a newt as a kid.
Were you not seeing what just happened? Every cell in that kid's body just exploded.
That's exactly why you can't quit.
What?
Because you called it a kid. Do you have any idea how many of these things that I've killed? And it never once occurred to me, you know what, that used to be someone's kid. You know, I met this girl once,
And she used to talk about the freakers the same way you do. She used to call them sick people. I thought that was crazy, but she looks at them the same way that you do.
So you think I'm crazy?
No. I think you're the first sane person I've seen in 2 years.
She was ready to give it all up when Deacon doubled down. In 2 years, everyone Deacon ever came across, none of them ever referred to freakers as people or Newt as a kid. They weren't sick people. They were creatures devoid of life and were worthy of only death. Everyone here, as part of the militia or any other camp, are all just trying to survive. They all accept what situation they're in and are just focused on what their next meal is going to be, where it's going to come from, how they're going to find a comfortable place to sleep. Deacon is one of them. He cares only for survival. Even Weaver, who was doing his own research, wasn't doing what Sarah was. She was trying to save the world. The level of humanity in her is unlike anyone else Deacon has ever came across, and for that reason he encourages her to not give up. They can double down, they can go AWOL, leave together, head to Cloverdale, and dive headfirst into any and all of their files. Look into their research, see what they got, and build off of it, or reverse engineer where this virus came from. They have the equipment, they'll have food, all they need is for Sarah to not give up. Sarah would finally agree to leave with Deacon, but there would now be an immediate problem. Well, a few. From this moment forward, everything would be made much harder for the two of them. For starters, while Sarah was going to pack supplies to go AWOL with Deacon, Deacon would be abruptly called to help Corey perform a field test on Weaver's napalm Molotov. When he returns to the militia's camp, Sarah and Weaver would be relocated into the heart of the camp, inside the central cave that the Colonel refers to as the Ark. Here, Sarah and Weaver would be placed under strict surveillance where nobody could speak to either one of them without special authorization, and even then, Sarah wasn't allowed to speak to anyone privately. This was in response due to the camp's one and only doctor recently being killed, so all other personnel seen as invaluable to the militia would be under strict surveillance near the Colonel's personal headquarters. Their original plan of riding out together now would be impossible. This would prompt Deacon to contact O'Brien. Calling in his owed favor, Deacon would ask O'Brien to airlift him and Sarah from the top of the militia's central mountain when the two of them were ready. O'Brien would agree so long as Deacon ensures the camp's air defenses are deactivated. When that was done and Deacon was ready, he would radio in O'Brien, who would then fly in and pick them both up. Now it was just a waiting game. While they bided their time, Sarah would issue Deacon one last requisition form for her quote-unquote research. In reality, she'd ask him to very carefully pick a handful of hemlock flowers. On his way out, Weaver would throw in a personal request as well. Equally as upset and tormented by the atmosphere within the cave, he's dying for an MP3 player. As luck would have it, Deacon would be able to successfully pick the hemlock and find an MP3 player, and when he'd return, he'd be able to disperse the items he acquired. Wait a few more days, and then the time to strike would come. As the Colonel prepared a speech, a new batch of sworn-in recruits would be given a tour around the camp. But before that happens, the Colonel addresses the camp. His holy war is now expanding beyond just the freakers. The new batch of recruits have come from all over, and it just so happens that some of these recruits have come from the north, sharing information that there is indeed other camps living vile, sinful lives that are almost as bad as the freakers. And so the Colonel, being the religious fanatic that he was, would declare that everyone outside of this camp will be baptized by fire. God has blessed him with the holy power of purging this land. He will not sweep this land with the mighty waters from the days of Noah, but rather through the lead and flames issued by the militia. As the Colonel's fanatic speech reached a fever pitch, Deacon would radio O'Brien. Now was the time to leave. Deacon would make his way to the air defenses, deactivate them, then he would go and get Sarah. The pair would sneak their way to the top when they would bump into the Colonel, who's giving the new recruits a tour of the camp. As luck would have it, Schizo just happened to be one of the new recruits.
We're just about to go down into the Ark. You should join us.
Gentlemen,
Colonel... This is Lieutenant Whitaker. She heads up part of the research team that's exploring ways to use poison to defeat our enemies.
Traitor!
Wait! Stay back! Chopper!
Schizo would paint a picture of Deacon being a spy from Lost Lake Camp. According to him, he and Deacon had already had a run-in at Lost Lake when Deacon was in a drunken rage attacking a poor innocent woman. Schizo allegedly intervened, saving the woman, but there's a mark on Deacon's back that he'd never forget. It's a tattoo of a dead dog chewing through a chain. Schizo pleads with the Colonel to reveal his back, and they'll know who's telling the truth between the two of them.
At Lost Lake Camp, he attacked a woman.
What the fuck are you talking?
He wasn't wearing a shirt. Son of a bitch has a tattoo covering his back. It's some satanic shit. It's some kind of dog, a dead dog chewing through a chain or something, like it was nothing. I pulled him off her. He was drunk and we fought like hell, but who knows what wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been there. You make him show us his back, and you will see who's lying.
I'm sorry, Colonel. This shit is just so crazy.
Turn him. You wear the image of Cerberus, the Hound of Hades. How fitting that you were discovered ascending from the underworld.
Completely taking it at face value, the Colonel would brand Deacon a demonic traitor who was conspiring with Sarah. The Colonel would accuse Sarah of attempting to betray him and even talking to Nero the entire time, recalling that he did find Sarah at a Nero checkpoint. The Colonel was about to shoot her when Deacon intervened and accepted blame for everything. Sarah knew nothing about any of it. She was an unknowing hostage of his that he lied to in order to get her to go up to the top with him. As Deacon says this, O'Brien could be heard through the radio corroborating Deacon's story that he was in fact the one communicating with him. The Colonel would destroy the radio, command that Schizo be freed, Sarah would be forgiven, and Deacon would be taken to lockup, scheduled to be hanged the following day. Now, it's one thing for Schizo to lie about the entire story. It's a whole other thing to weave a story where Lost Lake becomes a prime target for the militia, and Deacon, in the lie of his, actually goes against his one code of never killing or attacking unarmed women. It's the strictest rule that he has, and Schizo was well aware of it. It's beyond insult to injury. Luckily for Deacon, in this moment, he would have an ally. Corey would knock him out, but he wouldn't take him to lockup. When Deacon comes to, Corey puts it all together. That ring of his, that mongrel's ring that he took from Sarah, is actually Deacon's. And Deacon's wife was never Beth, it's Sarah. Corey would say that any man that went through hell for 2 years straight looking for his wife non-stop isn't someone that deserves to die at the end of a rope. But he pleads with Deacon, don't go back to the camp. He's guaranteed to die. He offers him the chance to actually come with him. Many people within the camp are all coming together to realize and accept the Colonel is, in Corey's own words, batshit crazy. His holy war is being declared upon innocent people, and Corey wants no part of this. Deacon, however, says that he has to go north. He has to warn Lost Lake Camp. And this is where the story takes a little bit of a turn when it comes to Deacon's personal motivations. He will return to Lost Lake Camp. It was attacked by the militia, with Schizo even being there personally. Iron Mike would unfortunately be fatally injured during that attack, but this entire time, Deacon's priorities went from, I gotta save Sarah, to, she's gonna be okay. I have to save Lost Lake. The militia are coming. They're a giant army supplied by a weapons cache that they secured from the National Reserve. No camp, even if they were unified, can stop that onslaught. They basically have to hit them first before they attack them. Since Deacon was at the militia's camp for quite some time, he knew the camp's layout, so he would put together a plan to knock the camp out in one fatal blow. Utilizing Ricky's skills in welding, they would resource a truck, reinforce it with a bunch of plating, and rig it with 100 gallons of creosote and fertilizer, essentially making it a giant bomb. This was going to be driven straight across into the camp's main gate where the militia's armory was. If everything went according to plan and the bomb actually made its way to the main gate, the entire weapon armory will go in one blow. At that point, it's all about cleaning up any stragglers. Should anyone from Lost Lake want to participate, then Ricky can head and assault from the southern gate with those volunteers. According to Deacon, that's where the slave labor camp was, and so there would be much less resistance. Boozer would be the one to drive the truck, accompanying his best friend on what feels like their final adventure together. And Ricky would tag along, leading the assault on the southern gate. Now, depending on the player's trust level with Tucker and Copeland's camp, would determine whether or not, those camps contribute writers to the assault, which, if you do that beforehand, makes this battle feel like one giant-ass mini-civil war. Even though you don't really see it, that cutscene where those additional writers show up is touching. But the assault on the malicious camp would be a success. There are some emotional beats with Boozer playing even Deacon by making him think he blew himself up with the truck when he jumped at the very last minute. Hearing Deacon's sorrow at the thought of his friend not making it out is unforgettable though. Hearing him come out of the water and kind of whimper to himself about why his friend didn't jump out is unforgettable.
Boozer, why didn't you jump? You should have jumped.
The end where the Colonel is slowly killed by the poison Sarah gave him while he and Deacon are fighting over the Colonel's loaded pistol is also top-notch, but there's two bigger parts I want to focus on. Schizo's death. Very few times, if any others besides the death of Carlos and definitely Schizo, does Deacon show a real lack of holding back. Now, I've pointed out him struggling on unperforming mercy killings, but the way he kills Schizo, not even Carlos was given that level of disrespect and mockery. Following him on all fours and telling him the freakers may give him a more horrifying death, but their lack of enjoyment is why he's taking the pleasure himself is just beautiful.
You know something, Schizo? There was a time when I would have dragged you out into the shit. And I would have left you to the freaks. Hey. I'm not gonna do that. You wanna know why? Because they would tear you limb from limb. But you know what? They wouldn't enjoy it.
And then there's the ending. Deacon as a leader is completely awkward. It doesn't help that the way that Ben's studio put together the crowds in this game doesn't help, but I absolutely love the transition, the near 180 in Deacon's mentality. He's no longer tormented by having this tunnel vision of his wife. He finally found her, but it's not even just a selfish motivation behind it anymore. He doesn't want to just get up and leave with her. He understands the work that she's doing. He understands that the world that he's living in wouldn't allow him the luxury to just get up and leave. This world is completely different, and he's here to help where he can. He's no longer confining himself to just living out in the road, stuck in the past, stuck on everything that he lost, everyone that he lost. While he may not be the ideal leader, at least he's in a position where he's more than willing to help out. He doesn't have to be so bitter, resentful, and angry about everything that was taken from him. In some ways, he completely honors the death of Iron Mike by doing that. And it's because of that, in the game's ending, I don't really see this as a complete love story. The first half of the game might be, but the second half is all about Deacon finding his place and position in this world and starting to live for the people around him, not for the person that he had lost.